Are you a calm, rational person, or do you let your emotions control you? Do you handle stress well, or do you panic at the first sign of trouble? Are you a bright individual, or someone who is a slow learner? Well, it all depends on the dignity of your moon. Astrologically speaking, the moon is undoubtedly the most important of all the planets. It is our mind, our personality, how we think, and what we feel. It literally dictates who we are as individuals because it is everything we perceive and the reason we perceive it as we do. The moon also represents our mothers, the nurture we get as children, the emotional development, and how we will look at the world afterwards. The moon is also quite unique in terms of its dignity because, unlike every other planet, it can appear brighter or dimmer in a night sky. It has a monthly cycle which influences the way it will operate in our chart. This is far from trivial because, unlike every other planet, this aspect determines what exactly will the moon do in our chart, how will it operate, and how strong it is, how bright does it shine. To give an example, imagine a new moon in Taurus, where it is exalted, in the fourth house, its own home. One might imagine that this moon should be quite strong and extremely effective, but that's not the case. The actual result of such a placement is either emotional detachment or a mother that doesn't nourish the child, hence an emotional malnourishment. Now, why would that be the case? Well, if the moon doesn't shine, it is as if it is absent from our lives. A moon that doesn't shine has very little strength. So, why would we need exaltation, debilitation, and house positions for the moon if it is so dependent on the brightness, the monthly cycle? Because even if the moon is full but it is debilitated, it will produce quite a fearful individual, someone who is unable to properly control his emotions, his fears, his phobias. If the moon is well placed, however, that same individual can be extremely bright, extremely smart. An exalted full moon shows a genius. The most interesting difference between the dignity of the moon and the dignity of every other planet is its directional strength, the house it is placed in. If it is in the 10th house, yet it is full, it will be just as strong as if it is in the 4th house. The reason for that is again the fullness of its cycle, its ability to shine. Yet there is one major difference because, in terms of the emotional stability of the individual, it will be hampered by that position. It will depend far more on his public image than it should. He will have far less emotional stability than if that same moon was in the third or in the fifth. The worst theoretical position for the moon is the eighth house. However, this position is often misunderstood because if the moon is in good dignity in the eighth house, it doesn't mean a person who is melancholic or fearful. It can actually mean a person who is thinking too much with his brain in his pants, shall we say. A person who is obsessed with sex. But not necessarily a person who is either fearful or dim-witted. In fact, he can be a great researcher. He can be a great detective. Yet, he might not be in control of his hormones. Physically speaking, the dignity of the moon and its fullness have quite a few interesting results. For example, the size of a woman's breasts is directly dictated by the condition of the moon. The moon also dictates our intelligence, as was mentioned before. In fact, if the moon is well placed, again, a person can be extremely good at learning and he can be a very bright individual, even a genius. Now, one should also check several other factors in the chart, such as the condition of the fifth house and the condition of the third. But those alone will not dictate intelligence. One should also examine the condition of Mercury and whether or not either Mercury or the moon are aspected by Rahu, because that again can be a very important factor in a person's intelligence. Also, the placement of Saturn and its conjunctions and aspects can also influence intelligence, but that's a story for another time. Another important parameter which the moon is associated with is the calcium, which builds the bones in our bodies. Now it doesn't govern calcium uptake, that is the responsibility of the sun, but it does govern how well it is deposited in our bones. So it is extremely important to check the condition of the moon in terms of the ability of our bone structure to maintain itself. Now, this is especially important for women who often lose bone density at later stages of their lives. Another extremely important aspect of the condition of the moon is mental health, because at the end of the day, it is both our brain and our personality. So, if we see a conjunction between the moon and the nodes or any other malefic, we can expect it to appear in the person's mental condition. Now, it doesn't always represent a mental illness, but quite often it does affect the way a person thinks. If the moon is conjunct with Mars, for example, it will make an individual more aggressive than the rest of the population. If it is conjunct Saturn, the person will be more melancholic or more fearful, or both. The nodes are usually the culprits when it comes to severe mental illness, but only if another malefic is conjunct or aspecting that combination, and usually it also requires that combination to occur in one of the malefic houses, the 6th, 8th, or 12th. Now, this brings us to another very important aspect of the moon's dignity, because it also represents the ability of a person to establish and maintain a family unit. Whether the person can be in a nuclear family, how would his relationship develop with his relatives, etc. Now, this is obviously linked both to his personality and to his mental health and to his emotional development. So, it is all interconnected in this regard, and it will also influence how well can he raise children, how well can he maintain a harmonious home. Now, due to the complexity of analyzing the condition of the moon with all of those three factors having such effects, it is very hard to offer an all-in-one solution to any of the possible problems which can arise. This is one of the issues where it is better to consult an expert to resolve the problem rather than relying on some misinformation which can potentially lead to more problems. In fact, if the moon is already afflicted, it is far more likely that an individual will make the wrong decision or interpret something incorrectly. This is of course most obvious in cases of mental health, where an individual can be irrational in his thoughts, but it is not restricted to that application alone. This is also a situation where it is often not the astrologer himself that can offer the solution, but a professional consultant such as a psychologist or a psychiatrist, depending on the issue at hand. Sometimes family therapy is what is required, but it all depends on the precise issue which one has to deal with. I hope you found this video useful. Please like and subscribe, and if you wish to learn more about medical astrology or astrology in general, please check out my website. You will find the link below. Thank you.